Hey everybody, just wanted to jump on here real quick before this episode really gets going. Um, as a heads up, there is some foul language that is going down in this podcast. So if that is something that offends you, or if you may be in the car with some little ones, etc., I just wanted to give you a heads up. There is some foul language here, so you may want to skip this one or save it for later when those little friends are not around. Here we go.
You can't pour from an empty cup. So I get people all the time that's like, I don't want to be selfish. I want to focus on other people. I want to give. I want to do all these things. That's amazing. That is beautiful. If you're coming from a place like that, you are an amazing soul. And I totally have nothing but admiration for you. But you're not going to be able to do that effectively if you don't work on yourself first. How can you love other people if you can't love yourself? How can you help other people if you haven't helped yourself first? Because when you're able to build yourself up and you're able to come from a place of self-confidence and self-worth, then you're able to go out and give so much more than if you were to put others before yourself.
That is Joe Corcione this week on the Do It For Yourself podcast. Hey, my friend, how you doing? Welcome back to another episode here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. My name is Ian, and this is my podcast. And each week on this podcast, I get to sit down with someone who is doing it for themselves. And this week, my guest, Joe Corcione, he is a great example of someone who is doing it for themselves. Before we get into Joe's story, right up front, I just want to ask you for a quick favor. If you could, take a minute or two and leave a review on the app that you are listening to this podcast on. I would greatly appreciate it. It's going to help me out a ton, and it's going to give me some great feedback on what you like or dislike about the podcast. So, my guest this week, my guest is Joe Corcione. And Joe's story of doing it for himself started at a pretty young age when he realized that the medication that his doctor had put him on when he was a kid had gotten a little out of control, and he wasn't using it quite the way that he was supposed to, and it was becoming more of a problem than it was a help. And so we get into what it was like for him in high school and then in college, selecting a college that he was going to go to and some of the reasons why he chose to go there, and his life now after college and how he is giving back, doing it for himself, and trying to help others find their way and do it for themselves and really just get back on track with life. So, without any further delay, I would like to bring you this week's conversation
Just
with
roll it.
Joe.
For sure, man. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So, Joe, I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out, getting in touch with me. We're exchanging some podcast love. I was just recently we just recently recorded an episode for your podcast, and as we were talking before we did that recording, you had asked, if there would be any interest in coming me having you on my show.
Mhm.
And so you kind of gave me a little synopsis of your story, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that because it's a story that I feel resonates with a lot of people, and definitely the specifics of your story could potentially resonate with a lot of people because of the current state of affairs that we are in. So,
Mhm.
just want to say, welcome to the Do It For Yourself podcast, and I'm really looking forward to getting into your story.
Hey, man. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show, man. It's really an honor to be a guest on your show, and I was really grateful to have you on my show. You absolutely killed it, and had a great conversation with you. And I'm just really excited to have a great conversation here and provide value to your listeners, because I think what you and I are doing is really meaningful, not only to me, but I'm sure to a lot of people out there. So let's do it, and let's kick some ass in this conversation.
Yeah, 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 and I will definitely keep all the listeners here updated on the show that comes out from your podcast. So if this particular episode happens to air after your podcast airs, definitely check in the show notes because I'll make a mention of that, and obviously you'll be able to find it on social media all over the place, and we'll definitely get a chance later on to get all of Joe's social media to figure out where we can keep in contact with him. So the first thing that I kind of want to start off with is I want to talk about what you're doing right now. With some of your coaching clients, some of the stuff that you're up to, and some of the things that you're doing now post college and post graduation and being out of college for a couple of years.
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking. So I got a lot of things going right now, and it's a pretty exciting time in my life. And I'm just, so grateful to have all these opportunities, and they're all opportunities that have allowed me to serve other people in one way or another. Now, there's kind of three big things that I'm doing right now that I'm just so excited about. But the common element within all those three things is that they're all towards helping people create a fulfilling life, because I believe that what we're really searching for in life isn't money, it's not fame, it's not power, it's not friends. What we're really searching for is fulfillment, or in other words, how we feel about ourselves when we're by ourselves. Do we feel good about ourselves even when no one else is telling us that we're doing great or anything like that? Like, do we have that internal success or not? I think that's really what we're searching for. So all the three things, the major things that I've got right now, are centered around that. So the first thing is, like you mentioned, I started up a coaching program where I'm a self-improvement coach that basically is someone who provides accountability, advice, programming, guides, anything like that, anything that a person may need that's going to help them improve in any area of their life, whether it be, physical health or mental health or emotional health, anything like that, spiritual health for that matter too. I am basically the person who comes in and says, "Hey, I'm going to teach the stuff that I've learned in my life, because I was an emotional, physical, and spiritual mess years ago, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. And I've learned some pretty useful tools that have allowed me to break through that. And I think it's so important to have coaches and mentors that can share what they've learned, so that not only the person can change, but they can also save the time of going through trial and error and trying to figure out things for themselves, like I did. Like, it took me 3 years to really understand myself and find what works, but I want to help people make that change as quick as possible and as effective and lasting as possible. So that's what I'm doing right now. I have a couple clients right now. For example, like, one of them is going through a really tough time in their lives where they just don't know what the hell they want to do. And a lot of people may say, "Oh, that's not that bad," but let me tell you, like, coming from a place where I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do with my life and feeling like there was no purpose or meaning, gosh, you just feel lost and confused, especially when you see on Instagram all these days about follow your passion and, oh my gosh, I'm doing what I love every day. And you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with my life? So I'm helping that person to not only find the thing that they really want to do in life, but ultimately create a life where they're able to wake up every single day with a purpose and a mission and feeling like they're actually contributing to the world, to society, to whoever. And because that's what I feel like is a common element in human fulfillment. And then the other person is going through a similar story with mine, where they're going through a drug addiction right now, and they're in a very, very dark place. And so that one's a little more serious, a little different, but I'm working with them. And again, only sharing the tips that have worked for me, because I don't go out there and give you something that I've never used, because I don't want to be a hypocrite and say, "Hey, you try this," and then, but I don't know if it works for myself. So I'm only giving out stuff that works. So those are the two clients that I'm working with. But if you have any other thing that has to fall in the realm of self-development, I'm more than happy to help and coach. And I'm always looking for new clients. Of course, like, my time is limited, and there is like an application kind of process we got to go through, and I got to really see if you're really serious to it, because there's a lot of accountability to it. But that's one thing I'm up to. Second thing is I'm also the host of the Art of Fulfillment podcast, which you were talking about, and it's all about fulfillment. So I already went into what that means to me, but in the show we basically bring on people who are really fulfilled in their lives, who have gone through massive massive transformations, such as yourself, Ian. And we try to find the tips, techniques, and strategies to help people master their own art of fulfillment and really create lives that they're proud of. So that's number 2. And number 3, I'm actually releasing an online course very soon. End of January is going to be when it's released, and it's all about stress management, because I do think that a lot of issues that come up in people's lives, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's lack of self-esteem, whether it's physical health, like I think it can all be linked back to stress. And if you can conquer stress, and not just stress, but your overall emotions, because sure, I'm marketing it as a stress management course, but it's really an emotional management course. And I'm really excited about that project. I've been working on it for months and months on end, hours and hours on end. There's a lot of great content. It's going to be at a reasonable price, and it's something that people can do on their own and kind of use it to, master their own emotions and ultimately create a place where they're not only feeling peaceful, not only feeling like they're calmer, but really empowered. Because a lot of stress management techniques out today are all about relaxation, but I think it's much more worthwhile to be empowered. So I'm really teaching stress management through empowerment, and it's a lasting process that is not just like a breathing technique, like a Band-Aid. It's something that will actually get into the depths of your psychology, rewire your beliefs and your subconscious thought patterns that you didn't even know you had, to ultimately create lasting change in your life, where you can look back on your life and be like, fuck, I lived. That was awesome. I'm making this life what I want, and it's beautiful. So those are the 3 things I got going on right now.
And as you're going through this and as you're helping people, you said that you don't recommend anything that you yourself haven't tried or done or hasn't worked for you. But are you also learning as you go and
Mm-hmm.
able to implement new things and things that you've learned that, you know, yes, this way worked, but I've also tried this way and this way could work, so that you have kind of like a tool belt or a toolbox that you can pull from and have multiple things that you can offer up to some of these people that you're working with.
For sure, man. And yes, that's a great question. So, yeah, and it is true that I don't, when I'm giving advice to whether it's my clients or sharing a story on Instagram or writing a caption, whatever it is, I'm only writing about the things that I've done in my life because I know that I can get the results. However, I always keep that open mindedness to be like, hey, what I'm doing right now might not be the optimal way to do it. There might be another way to do it that's going to get me an even better result, or even a quicker amount of time, or be more effective. So I'm always keeping that open mind, even though I have strong convictions about the methods that I've done in my life. I'm always being open to any new experience, any new lesson, any new technique that can help me get further. And I'm always searching for it too. It's not like I'm trying to avoid it and waiting until it comes to me. I'm always just seeking it out, because I found that knowledge is just so powerful. But not just knowledge, but applying knowledge in your life, especially when it's new, it can be so amazing, because you're expanding your mind first and foremost, and most obviously. But the second thing is too, is you expand what's possible, because when you introduce yourself to new techniques, you learn that there's more to life than what you're just in. And when there's more to life than what you're just in your realm of experience, you gain more creativity, you gain more open-mindedness, you gain more consciousness, you gain more empathy, because you understand multiple points of views. Such a great thing to just keep trying to seek out knowledge. And instead of just trying to think that you are right all the time, always carry the notion that you might be wrong, and that you're open to the new experiences and open to the new things. Because I found that if you're not open to those new experiences, you might be missing out on progress that you can be making in double the amount of time, or more of an impact than you were with the current method that you're using. So I encourage anyone out there, even if they have something that totally worked for them, whether it's a weight loss program, whether it's a stress management technique, whatever it is, always keep your mind open to new things. Don't discount things off first glance. Like, don't look at it and be like, fuck it, it probably doesn't work, or fuck it, my way is much better. Because I did that and it really hurt me. And now anytime someone says, hey, I got this technique, and I said, oh, interesting, let me take a look at this. Let me try this out. Is it working for me? Is it not? Is it really convenient with my day-to-day life? And that has really served me and has allowed me to, gain knowledge quicker and get results better in my life, and also share more knowledge with the people who I'm coaching and sharing information with.
And so when you're implementing something new to try for yourself, how long do you test it out on yourself before you would then implement it with one of your clients?
Yeah, so I'm a very results driven person. It's all about, getting the result in whatever amount of time. Kind of the time thing kind of varies on different aspects, right? Like, for example, like if I wanted to go and try and build muscle, like I'm obviously not going to gain, 6 pounds of muscle 1 month or anything like that. But at the same time, there are some techniques that are closer. So the timing thing, I don't really want to talk about too much because I think it's very nuanced, but I think it's all about the result. And it's really is a thing where it says, okay, I'm trying this technique because of X, Y, and Z, and I want to get X, Y, and Z. And when I say X, Y, and Z, I mean the results, but more specifically, I guess to use that word as literal as possible, I try to get as specific as possible. What do I really want from using this technique? What do I really want from learning this information? Because there's so much information out nowadays that I think people just learn information just to learn it, but they never apply it or ever even think about what they're actually going to use it in their life for. So I'm always looking at information and being like, what do I want in my life? And I define that. So, for example, I'll give you just an example right now. So, I wanted to lose some body fat, with while maintaining some muscle, and I have never really done that before. Every time that I try to lose weight, it was always, pretty tough. But I learned that, one technique was just simple. It was just be in a caloric deficit every single day and and drink carbonated water to help to curb your hunger. And I was like, at first the little negative voice in my head was saying, that's just too fucking simple. It's not gonna work. Like, fuck that. But then I remembered, I said, no, I'm gonna be open minded. That's something that I value. That's something that, I think is gonna serve me. So I'm going to be open and I'm gonna try it out. And so for a month, I just kind of gave myself that kind of arbitrary timeline and said, let's just see if I lose some weight. And so my goal is just saying, like, I want to lose anywhere between, 5 to 8 pounds of fat. And I want to see after a month if I'm making progress, I'm going to keep on it. If not, then, I'll see what else is out there. So excuse me. So what I did was I basically just carried it out every single day, even though it was hard, kept my open mind. And, there are some days where I stepped on the scale, which I've learned later on that is not a good thing to look at every single day because it fluctuates so much.
Yep.
But I was getting a little frustrated because like some days I would go up, some days I would go down. But as I looked at it after a month after that, and I maintained that strict habit every single day, I actually did lose 8 pounds of body fat in a month, and it was unbelievable. And I said, "Fuck!" I almost discounted this thing because I thought it was simple, but I stayed with it every single day, and I got the result that I defined in the beginning. So I think it's twofold for anyone really listening to information to see if it's useful in your life. I think you have to first define actually what you want. And I know that sounds so simple, but I don't think people do it as enough these days. Really just ask, what's the result that you want? Number two, have the wherewithal to stick with that thing, even when it gets hard, even when it sucks, commit to it. And that's what it means. Commit to it means like you're going to do this shit no matter what. And then three, so it's actually three things, not two. Three is assess what happened. Did you do everything right? Did you get the result? Did you do all those things? And it sounds like such a simple process and it's common sense, but I think people fail to do it nowadays because we're in this instant gratification world where it's just like, fuck it. Like, I just want to be happy. Maybe this thing will work, maybe not, whatever. And they kind of skimp on not being clear. They skimp on not committing to it, and they skimp on reflecting on the results and actually if it worked. And so I think if you do those three things like I do, you can always assess whether a piece of information is useful or not and will move you towards your goals.
And so I want to track back a little bit to where you started and what really sparked this conversation for us to be on the podcast here. And you from a young age, very young age, started taking Adderall as part of your prescription. And I'm sure you don't remember this, but I want to know, you know, every kid, specifically boys, has difficulty focusing in elementary school. Like, that's just, it is what it is. Boys are active. They want to be up and bouncing around for the most part. Like, I understand that I'm generalizing here, but for the most part, boys want to be up, bouncing around. It's difficult to get them to sit in their seat. And there's some kids who just, they don't do well in school. Like, that's just it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you remember this being a problem, or was your Adderall prescribed from such a young age that that's not even a factor, like, you don't even remember?
I guess so I can answer your question just like clear enough. Do you say like, are you saying like, did I know kind of why I was being prescribed it? Did I understand those things, or is that kind of what you're going for there?
Like, so were you getting into trouble
Yes.
in
Yes.
school
Yes.
for, like, not paying attention and all that stuff, and then a direct result of that was going to the doctor for an evaluation.
Yeah, and yes, okay, I got you. So it was definitely more so than the average child. So I totally agree with you that, boys when they're young, they want to be active, they want to, be really really excited and passionate about things, and sometimes it's not as easy to focus in class and all those things, but I was definitely more on the rougher side when it came to getting in trouble, interrupting the class, being a loudmouth, hitting kids at times. Like I was just way more in the principal's office than the average kid. And it got to the point where my parents, like, they were sick of getting the call home from my teacher saying, "Hey, Joe's misbehaved again." I had to throw him into the principal's office again. They were sick and tired of that. They didn't want me to go down a wrong road. And so they said, okay, like, they took me to the doctor and I was diagnosed with ADHD. And so from there, the doctor gave the solution for what ADHD students were given that days, and that was being prescribed an Adderall. And at the time, like like I was a kid, right? When you're in third grade, you don't really, you kind of just do what your parents say. You don't question it. And so at the time, my parents said, "Hey, we're going to give you this medication. You're going to behave in class. Um, you're going to not act out as much. You're going to focus, and you're going to do better in school." And I said, "Hey, fuck it. I mean, that sounds pretty cool. Like, why not? Like, sure." So I took it, and it actually did end up serving me for a long time. I didn't go to the principal's office as much. I wasn't as impulsive. I started to excel in school. It was really serving me and doing my job, which unfortunately started to lead me down, a slippery slope down the road. But at the time, like I didn't really understand that it was going to be something that was going to lead to a lack of self esteem. I just saw it as a tool at the time that helped me, and my parents were just giving it to me because it helped, and it did. And so I didn't really question it too much at the time. Really, a lot of the questioning came around when I started to be in college, but the negative effects of it really started when I was in high school. So it was really down the road once I started to get down that slippery slope.
And did the school or the doctors or anyone offer any alternatives before they went straight to the medication? Like, was there anything that you can remember anyone suggesting or trying prior to, okay, you have ADHD, here's the medication?
I honestly don't know at all. I think again, like I just remember being in the doctor's room. I don't really specifically remember because obviously I wasn't focusing at the time, and my mind was wandering as a typical ADHD kid kind of does. So I don't remember anything specific. I just remember just coming out of that thing that the doctor's appointment, and my parents being like, "Hey, this is what's gonna happen." And I said, "Okay, sure, fuck it." So yeah, I don't know if any alternatives were given at the time. So
It's interesting to me, and the reason that it's interesting is because, like, I I've said it on my podcast and a lot of other people's podcasts multiple times, but I pretty much avoid the doctor at all costs, and I only go to the doctor when I absolutely have to.
mm,
But I always find it interesting when you go to the doctor and you say, "Hey, I have this going on or I have that going on,"
hmm
how quick they are to pull out that it's not a prescription pad anymore, but
yes,
how quick they are to write a prescription for something
yes,
instead of, looking at it in a more holistic way.
yes.
Because we'll get into it, but you still have ADHD,
Mhm. For
but you're
sure.
not taking you're not taking Adderall anymore.
No, sir.
So there's ways around it, and I just always find it interesting, that the providers are very eager to write the prescriptions, but they're not super eager to offer any help outside of the prescriptions.
Right. I mean, and I totally agree with you, man. Like I have a big problem with taking, medication in general. And obviously it's personal, and I understand that sometimes it's absolutely critical for some people, but I think in rare cases that's the thing. But, one of the things that I always think about is like depression. Like they're so quick to kind of just go out and prescribe Prozac or something like that really quick, when I think there's much more effective techniques out there in the holistic sense, like you said. Like go out and move
Mhm.
your body, go out and actually learn cognitive behavioral therapy, or go to even, like, I would even say, like, a therapist. Even though I don't agree with therapy 100%, I think a therapist would be even better than taking Prozac. Like there are things that you can do that are going to make you much better if you're depressed than taking the Prozac, because I always see that when you're taking a medication, whether it's Adderall, whether it's Prozac, whether it's a weight loss pill or whatever, what that is a temporary fix. It's like a band-aid. You throw a band-aid on a gaping wound that really hurts, it's not going to heal it. It's just going to stop the bleeding temporarily, but sooner or later the blood's going to seep through that band-aid and you're going to have to put another band-aid on and keep putting another band-aid on, but the thing's not going to heal because it's this big wound. So what you really have to do is you really need to get some alcohol or some cleaning agent and put it in there so it really gets to the source of that thing and goes in and starts to clean it. Like depression, like one of the big reasons why is twofold. Number one, like your brain chemistry is all fucked up. You're not producing enough dopamine. You're not producing enough serotonin, but you can do things that help to promote those things, such as exercise and eating healthy and not eating sugar. Like those things can really help. And then twofold, you can go in and kind of deconstruct your own limiting beliefs that are leading to this view of depression without even taking a single fucking pill. And that's the long-term solution instead of that band-aid fix like taking the medicine. But I think the doctors do it, to your point, is because I think it's quick, it's easy, and that's the culture that we're in. But I've learned in life that if you want something to last and you want to do something that's impactful, it's usually never quick and it's usually never easy. But I think when you do the quick and easy way, the long-term success is way, way more satisfying, fulfilling, and effective than if you were to take that band-aid fix.
And you had a big gaping wound that they put a Band-Aid on because as you said, it started to unravel and the gauze started to come off and the bleeding started to get like
Mm-hmm.
really, really bad around high school. So
Mm-hmm.
what were some of the side effects and what were some of the things that you started dealing with in high school that then led into your college life?
Yeah. So and a lot of this insight kind of came in hindsight in 2020 when I started to do more self-discovery work and understanding what drove my behaviors and why I did certain things. But at the time, it was very unconscious, especially in high school. So in high school, what happened was I started to feel very insecure about myself, but I didn't consciously know it. So I had developed this belief that I was not good enough, and that kind of stemmed from me, depending on this Adderall to do well in school, to focus, to talk to people, all those things. But I didn't consciously know it. So because I had a belief that I didn't feel like I was good enough, what I did was always try to get the approval of others. And at the time in high school, the really cool thing to do was drink, smoke, take drugs, all of those things. And by drugs, I mean not even just Adderall. Like I was doing some pretty crazy shit. And I did it all for attention and really just trying to like saying like, oh yeah, Joe Corcione's the cool kid. Like he's always out every weekend, like getting fucked up and drinking and blacking out and all those things. And I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. Like I'm feeling like I'm enough because of it. And at the same time too, I liked who I was when I was on the alcohol because I was going up and talking with girls. Like all that confidence was going away. Like it was that same story with the Adderall. That shit was serving me at the time. But you're right. It was that Band-Aid fix because it's not going to get any better. And what I also realized in hindsight in 2020 is that I was also getting really fucked up because I was just pretty miserable with the person that I was. And I didn't want to be by myself with my thoughts in a sober manner. I wanted to, just run away from that. So I would just get so fucked up. My school performance was like kind of dwindling. It wasn't really getting better, but it wasn't getting terrible. But I just didn't fucking care. All I cared about was partying. That was it. And I remember literally at one time, like someone asked me, they're like, what do you want to do with your life? And I remember telling them, I was like, all I want to do is party. Like, holy shit, man. Like, that's crazy. But I wanted to do that because it made me feel like I was enough. And all of that insecurity of feeling like I wasn't enough came from taking this medicine because I believe that without this medicine, I was no one. Without this medicine, I wasn't confident. Without this medicine, I couldn't go out and fucking, focus in class or do good work or get a job, anything like that. And so I was always trying to validate myself because of it. So that was really where it started to lead down was that road.
How did the insecurity of having to take the medication just to get through the day lead to then having to have the alcohol? Because from the way that you talked about it when you were a kid, you just looked at the medicine as something that helped you and it was
Hmm.
something that your parents were recommending and the doctors were recommending and it was something that was really working. But when and why do you feel like that switch flipped in high school that led you to feel like you weren't worth anything? I mean, that's pretty deep. That's
Mhm.
pretty deep to feel like you're not worth anything. Um, and it just from taking medication that was in fact helping you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it was a combination of several things, but I think the most effective one and kind of the knife that really hit deep was that there was actually some people in my life were like, oh, like, I think it was out of joking, but like one of those things where someone says a joke to you and it's so real that it hits you and you're like, fuck, that's actually really true. Like, that's not funny. Um, I think a lot of people started to joke and especially my friend groups. It was never really anyone in my family, but they would be like, oh, like Joe can't, he's off his medicine today. Oh man, like he's gonna fucking go crazy, or oh, he's off his medicine today. He's not gonna fucking concentrate or anything like that. And all of those remarks started to build up on me and saying like, oh fuck, like when I don't have my medicine, like I'm not gonna be like, like a human person. Like when people are gonna like say like, oh, watch out for him, like, oh, he's gonna be bad today without it. And I was like, fuck, like so who I am without this medication is basically someone who's a piece of shit. And that was my perception. Like, don't get me wrong, that wasn't reality, but that was my perception of the time from hearing those things. And over, hearing those things over and over, just programmed and kind of just got me questioning from a subconscious level, just being like, shit, like I'm really not great without this medication. Like, there's a reason why I'm on it. And everyone in life is always telling you, be yourself. And I was like, well, maybe I am just a crazy kid. And again, this is all subconscious. This is only when I really started to look back on it. So I just want to make that very, very clear because I wasn't really thinking about this in the time. This is all kind of the subconscious thing. But I would think like, I was like, fuck, like I'm literally taking someone to not be myself. And because of that, like it must mean that I'm not good enough. And of course, that was a shit false belief, but that was my perception at the time. And it really led to all those negative things like I talked about, like drinking to feel great and to be accepted by others, but at the same time to run away from my own self. And it also played into that too, because I was like, when I drink, like it runs me further away from who I am, who's not enough, but it turns me into someone enough. And yeah, man, it just started to that whole vicious cycle.
It also turned you into somebody that at the time you thought people wanted to be around
Yes.
because you were constantly still invited out to the parties,
Yes.
and you had girls that were coming to talk to you, probably had guys that were coming to talk to you that were just like, oh, what's up, bro, like, yeah, good to see you out again this weekend,
All the time, man.
and right, so then it escalated and it made you feel like you were fitting in with the crowd, even though it may not have been the best crowd to fit in with. And I listen, don't get me wrong, my friends and I in high school, like we did all of the same stuff, and I have so many memories from weekends that I spent with my friends in high school that I would not trade for the world,
Yes.
right? So it's not like you were an anomaly at this point in time. Like
Yes.
I was in the same exact boat, and I get it for sure. But when you started to think about college and you started applying to schools, was the party scene something that was high atop your list in making the decision of where you were going to go to college?
Oh, dude, let me tell you, it was the only decision that I made when I was looking at schools. So if you look at the schools that I applied to Penn State, Michigan State, West Virginia, UConn. What's the common element on them? Yeah, good schools, but all big fucking party schools. And my justification to my parents was, hey, this was a good school. Like, like it's good that I'm going here. But they were all giant party schools. That was the reason why I did it. And I went to Penn State because I was like, hey, it's like the top ranked party school. Like, this is going to be fucking awesome. I'm going to go and I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to join a frat. It's going to be fucking amazing. Oh, I can't wait. And like I told my parents, I was like, but it's a great school too, so don't worry. But deep down, I really just went there to just a fucking party. That's 100% the reason why. And I even tell that to people nowadays. I don't have any shame about it. Like, sure, looking back on it, like, would I make the same decision? No, fuck no. But at the same time, like, that's really what my thought process was at the time was I picked the school because I wanted a fucking party because again, that was my entire life. And I love how you brought up before saying that like things were just reinforcing that behavior around me, right? I would go out and drink and get fucked up and people would be like, yeah, bro, that's awesome. Or I'd go and I'd fucking, just rip 4 shots in a row, like back to back to back. And someone would be like, whoa, man, that's fucking awesome. Like, how do you do that? And I want to just tell people that the way that addiction starts or the way that you get into any bad habit or anything like that is that you're getting positively reinforced. Whether it's positive reinforcement by your surroundings, positive reinforcement by yourself, if you get anything to get positive reinforced over and over again, you're going to keep doing it and you're going to get addicted to it, because what it's doing is it's teaching your brain that doing that thing equals pleasure, and our brain will do whatever it takes to move towards pain, or sorry, move away from pain and go towards pleasure. So at the time, like I would go out, drink, get the reward of being like, yo, man, you're fucking awesome, which totally satisfied my limiting belief of not being good enough, because it was saying, hey, you are enough in that situation. And when we find something that hits at our root core limiting beliefs and it proves that thing wrong, whether or not it's a positive or negative thing, if it keeps hitting us, we're going to keep going after it, because that's what we have a need to have our limiting beliefs almost like I don't want to say totally counterbalanced, but we don't want to feel those limiting beliefs, and we all have a need to feel connected. We have a need to feel this. It all goes back to what we need from human fundamental perspective. And Tony Robbins mentions this. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but there's 6 human needs. It's certainty, uncertainty, love, significance, growth, and contribution. And if you have something that meets 4 of those needs, it becomes an addiction. So at the time, like drinking an Adderall, like certainty, yeah, it gave me the certainty because I knew that I was going to go and I was going to feel a certain way. I knew exactly how I was going to feel. Uncertainty, because when I would go and get fucked up, it was a whole different night every time, right? Like, am I going to get fucked up at someone's house? Am I going to get fucked up in the woods? Like, what is it? It's uncertainty. Connection and love, people coming up and being like, yo, man, you're fucking awesome, I love you. You get that connection from there. And then significance, because people are like, wow, Joe is so cool, man, he's fucking awesome, like, look at him, he's great, he can pound 4 shots in a row, no problem, without even wincing. And boom, right, that 4 of my needs met, that's an addiction. So think about that thing think about those things whenever you're getting into or whenever you find yourself in a bad habit, whenever you find yourself doing something that you're not proud of, it's probably because it's meeting 4 of your needs, or at least 3 of them. And take stock of that, and becoming aware of that is so powerful, because once you become aware of that, then you can start to take the steps towards unraveling that habit and creating something beautiful out of it that can meet your 4 needs, but something that actually improves your life as opposed to sets it back.
To you, though, this wasn't something that was a bad habit at the time. So when did it become evident that this road that you were going down was not a good road to go down?
Yeah, so it really started in college. So the first 2 years was a lot of the same story in high school. I joined a fraternity. I was getting absolutely just blitzed on the weekends, doing drugs, smoking weed, like all that shit, for about like the first, I would say more like the first year. And then it actually kind of took a different turn, where I started to actually I started to realize that the Adderall was really helping me do well in school. And that was something that I just really wanted to kind of go towards. I was like, just want to be really good at school. I was still getting fucked up and all that shit, but I was like really working hard in school and stuff, but all from the need to kind of be significant. And what happened was I got so consumed in that, in trying to prove myself in academia, and at the same time to prove myself in the social ranks and the fraternity and all that stuff, that it really developed this superiority complex over people. So I was an asshole. I like started to really just be so condescending to people. I started to be like, oh wow, you're fucking stupid, like would do that. And not just with everybody, but like, or not just with any person that is not my friend, but like literally with my friends, with people who are really close to me, with things, I would like genuinely go out and be an absolute dick to them. And I would do that all out of insecurity. So first and foremost, the first thing that started to dwindle was my relationships. I didn't have as many friends in college. My relationship with my girlfriend at the time, which was 3 years, and it ended up going on 4.5, and ended up ending because I believe that it was just an emotional mess. But I think the number one thing that really started to bring me towards the path of like, holy shit, this is bad, is that when I was by myself, I would feel like shit. I would feel just like, oh my gosh, man, like what the fuck? Like what the fuck am I doing? Like I was always trying to like go out and prove myself, but deep down I knew that I was being an asshole. Deep down that I knew that I hated myself. Deep down I knew that I was useless. Or I shouldn't say I knew, because it's not true, but at the time I felt like I was fucking useless, because I had to take this drug to be someone I was, like be someone that I wasn't, but that who I valued, because who I was on Adderall was someone who I valued at the time, like getting good grades and fucking, being the kid who's like really fucking, because like it was interesting because Adderall really, when I was a kid, had the calming effect. But when I started to go up, it started to actually make me like more alive, more energized. It kind of had a different effect on me. Um, but I valued those things, and I realized I was like, fuck, like I just hate taking this shit. Every single day I would just hate taking it. I would hate to tell people I did it. And I just felt it really all just came back to me just feeling like, holy shit, like I'm a piece of shit. And I had this terrible sense of self-worth. I didn't love who I was. I had no fucking confidence, like literally no fucking confidence. And all of that just kind of culminated over time. And they're like, it just really just all started to build and build and build and build before it came to the point where, and I'm just fast forwarding the story just a little bit. It was out of school. I didn't have a job. I was unemployed. I actually just left my job on Wall Street because I was just so miserable and burning myself out. So I was on Wall Street, left the job. I didn't have a girlfriend. We split up, and I do credit that a lot on my part for the ways that I acted in our relationship and didn't cherish it. My relationship with my family was awful. I was living with them, but I was constantly fighting with them, not really just getting along well with them. I didn't have much friends at the time, and a lot of the bridges I kind of torched. And I didn't have a purpose or a path in life. And most damaging, I just had this sense of just like, wow, I am a piece of shit. And I think when you feel really bad about yourself, it's the worst thing that you can face in your life. It's the worst. I think it's like being in a mental prison, like feeling like you can't get out and feeling like I was like, fuck, I was born this way. This is the way that I was born. There's no way I'm getting out of there. And I was just in this place of despair and unhopefulness. And so that's where it eventually led me. And that it really came to a point where I said, I need to do something about this because it was just so fucking aggravating to be that miserable, and it was exhausting, and I was tired of being tired, and I just wanted to fucking I just knew that there was something more to life, and I just went searching for it. So yeah.
And you're not gonna make a change until you are at that point.
Right.
For most people, that's the point that it's going to take. Like, most people are going to have to get to that point or get really close to that point in order to make a change. And so you get to that point and it's time to start making a change, and you realize that you have to start making a change. I would say leaving your job on Wall Street was probably something that was going to help in this change, because it seems like, just given your personality, that's not a place for you. Um, but after you leave your job on Wall Street, where do you go? What is that first step that you take after leaving this job? I mean, you said that your relationship with your family was not good. You didn't have a relationship with your girlfriend anymore. So where could you go once you left this job?
Yeah, so here's the thing. So what happened was I had to turn to something else, and I had to learn from someone. I realized that there's probably something that I can do, and I don't know exactly. Actually, I really do what started to pique my interest. So one day I was just kind of just in the fucking annals of YouTube, just fucking, in a rabbit hole of videos, just pointless videos. And there was a video on the sidebar that had a lecture from Tony Robbins. And like the title was like how to like transform your life or something like that. And at the time, I was just like, it's just a fucking self help thing. Like, whatever. It's
Super
just fucking,
clickbaity too.
yeah, yeah, right. I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. Like, whatever this is. But there's a part of me which said, click it, open up. Like you want to watch this. And so I said, fuck it, whatever. It's going to be stupid anyways. And I clicked into it and I started to watch the video. And at the time, like I didn't realize, but something was kind of shifting in me when I was watching Tony speak, because his whole message was just around how you have the power to change your emotional states. You have the power to change any quality inside of you, no matter what it is. And even if you were born with something, you can always change, adapt, and get better to become a person, whoever you want to be in any area of your life. And that was the first time that I actually heard anything like that, because when I was growing up, and I love my parents so much, I love them to death. They're amazing. But I literally fucking remember asking them this question, being like, why is Bill Gates so rich? right? Like, why is Bill Gates so rich? What makes him so successful? And my parents were like, oh, because he was super smart. And I was like, well, how did he get smart? And they were like, oh, he was born that way. And that kind of conditioned this thing. It's like you're either born a certain way or you're not. But listening to Tony Robbins speak and saying you can change anything, it was this eye-opening thing. So much so that I actually asked my sister, because she worked at Barnes & Noble at the time, I said, hey, can you go and pick me up Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power? And she's like, what the fuck? Like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? Like, it was kind of like a weird thing for me because I was always dissing that kind of shit. But she got me the book and I started to read it. And I remember reading that book and feeling a new life open up in me, because in that book, it was just all about that same message. It was like, change is possible. You can fucking change anything. And you can change your belief systems, and all of this new stuff, this new world that I was diving into started to unlock different things in my life. And I got so fucking excited. I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. This is the key. Like, this is going to make me feel amazing. And in that process in the book, it was like, just name some goals that you would really want to do for yourself. And it was so funny because literally that was the first time where it was like, well, I want to feel happier. And one of the things that in the book that it really prompted you to was like, what is the source of your unhappiness? And I started to think, and I said, it's my general, like, I don't know, it's just like not having a job. It's not having a good relationship with my family, like whatever it was, like all that shit. And so I was like, all right, like maybe I just got to change those things and try and get a job and like, I don't know, fucking be more relaxing in life and try to change the things around myself. And so I tried to change the things all around myself and nothing was fucking working. Like I was like, I'm going to relax more. I'm going to wake up more. I'm going to watch some TV, not just fucking worry about getting a job. I'm just going to fucking relax a little bit, see what happens. And so like I started to relax a little more and all that stuff, and nothing was changing. I wasn't feeling better. I wasn't, feeling happier about myself. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it was like, do what you love. It was like, all right, I'm going to play some fucking video games. Played video games all day. And I was like, I'm not feeling better. Like, what the fuck's going on? And it was only until I started to dig in a little more that I realized that I had to change my internal environment to make the external environment seem better. It all started within me. And then I realized just kind of just going through a little more of the self-discovery process and listening to more of Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins was really the figure that helped to change my life a lot and really inspire the ideas, was he said, look inside yourself to see like where your insecurities and your beliefs are. And I realized that one of my beliefs was like, I cannot function in the world without Adderall. So I knew that was the first time when I remember writing that down specifically and being like, I feel really unhappy because I want to take Adderall, or because I am taking Adderall and it's an addiction and I feel like I'm not great enough without it. So it was funny because at the day after that I did that, I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to fucking, I'm not going to take Adderall anymore. And guess what? The next day I woke up, I didn't take the Adderall. I was 6 hours in it. I was absolutely fucking miserable, dude. I was fucking like literally like my head was just pounding. I didn't feel great. And I caved in. I fucking caved in. And I said, fuck. Wow, I'm not good enough. I suck. All that shit. Just going through negative self-talk. But I realized I was like, you know what? I got to build myself up. I got to build the skill set. I got to work on me. I got to work on myself. Who the fuck cares about the external environment being, more relaxed, doing the things that I love? No, I need to fucking work on myself, because I realized that I and only me, I was accountable for every single fucking thing that has led me to that moment. It was me who was keeping this Adderall addiction up. It was me who was giving in whenever the going got tough. It was me who ruined the relationships. It was me who was the reason why I didn't have a job. All those things was because of me. So I was like, what I got to do next? I got to work on me. And that's what I set out to do. So the long-winded way to kind of answer your question is like, where do I go after like getting out my job in Wall Street? Was working on myself. And it's a whole transformative process, but that was the best thing in my life was making the commitment to work on myself, and not just for that time period, just so I could eventually get off Adderall. Because let me tell you this, man, the goal was eventually to get off Adderall. That was the goal. But really the goal, what I wanted in life, what that meant to me, achieving that goal, was to feel great about my life, was to feel proud of myself, was to feel like I mattered, not to my parents, not to my friends, not to my followers on Instagram, but I mattered to myself. And I wanted to achieve that more than anything. And so I set myself on a crash course and a long fucking grueling journey to do it. But I eventually got there and it was fucking beautiful.
Yeah, you have to work on yourself first.
Hmm.
It's the same, it's that same message. I've seen it posted, a bunch of times. I think the first person I really saw post it is a guy named Sean Whalen, who I have mentioned on this podcast before. But he's like, people don't listen to one of the most simple pieces of advice that everyone has probably heard, and it's when you're sitting on an airplane and they tell you that you need to put your mask on first.
Yes.
And it's so, so true.
Hmm.
And it's not even just in an emergency situation like a crash landing on an airplane. That's in life in general.
Yes.
You have to put your mask on first. You have to take care of yourself first before you're going to be able to take care of other people.
Yes.
It sounds so, so simple, but it's something that a lot of people struggle with. Like a lot of business people and CEOs and people who are building all of their, you know, they're building all of this stuff around them, but they're not taking care of themselves to make sure that they're going to be there for the people that mean the most to them in the long run.
100%. And one thing that I think that to add to your point there is I think people need to learn that if you can't pour from an empty cup. So I get people all the time that's like, I don't want to be selfish. I want to focus on other people. I want to give. I want to do all these things. That's amazing. That is beautiful. If you're coming from a place like that, you are an amazing soul. And I totally have nothing but admiration for you. But you're not going to be able to do that effectively if you don't work on yourself first. How can you love other people if you can't love yourself? How can you help other people if you haven't helped yourself first? Because when you're able to build yourself up and you're able to come from a place of self confidence and self worth, then you're able to go out and give so much more than if you were to put others before yourself. And it's a cliche thing to say, yeah, like, think about other people before you think about yourself. But I really think it's backwards. I think you got to think of yourself before thinking of other people. And it's not being selfish. I think, again, like, to anything, there's extremes and there's not extremes, right? Like, too much of one side, you're a fucking martyr, and too much of another side, you're a selfish asshole. So you got to find the balance in between. But I say, if you prioritize self care and prioritize your self improvement over improving the lives of others, you're going to find that you're going to be able to improve the lives of others so much more effectively if you take care of yourself first.
That's why I titled this the Do It For Yourself podcast. And
Hmm.
that's the point that I try and convey to people, that doing it for yourself is not something that is selfish.
Yeah.
You're taking care of yourself. You're doing something that you have always wanted to, and you're doing something because it's what you want to do and not what someone else is telling you that you should do. But this
Yeah.
is not about being selfish, and I think that you absolutely just conveyed that point perfectly.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely perfectly. So before we close things out, I do want to give you a chance to give everyone your social media tags and everything where you can be found. I know you said earlier that you're doing some Instagram posts, and you mentioned your podcast as well. So where can people find you and see what you are up to?
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for asking. So on Instagram, I'm at Joe Corcione. That's JoeCorcione. And I'm very active on there. I'm always posting Instagram stories, posting posts about the stuff that I learned in my journey. So from you hearing my story here, I didn't really go too much into what I did exactly to transform myself, but that's actually a lot of the content that I give away on Instagram totally for free. Just what are like the techniques and strategies that I use to get me out of the dark hole that allowed me to get to the place where I'm at today. So you can find all that stuff there. And you can also find that information too on my podcast, The Art of Fulfillment. So I have interviews just like I did with Ian, where we talk with people who are deeply fulfilled in their lives. But I also have solo cast episodes as well, where I detail my journey, what I exactly did to gain self-confidence, to gain a sense of self-care, to ultimately get myself out of addiction, and what that meant to me, and how you can get out of any single problem in your life. If you're listening to this right now and you're like, fuck, I resonated with his story so much, and I got this problem that I don't know how the fuck I'm going to get out of it. Because let me tell you this right now. When I was addicted on Adderall, I had no idea how the fuck I was going to get off it. I thought this was going to be a fucking impossible journey. It was difficult, but it wasn't impossible. And I went through it and I did it. And it took me a bunch of trial and error. And again, I don't want people to go through long-winded years of, not transformation, but long-winded years of trial and error before they find something that transforms them. I want to give them the thing that's actually going to get them there quicker, because that's what I want more than anything. And I share a lot of that stuff in the Art of Fulfillment podcast. You can listen wherever podcasts are. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, whatever. And also too, if you would like to, potentially be coached by me, because, hey, I did it by myself to some extent, but I would have gotten nowhere if I didn't have the mentors that I did in my life. So I had a really close group of mentors who were coaching me on a very frequent basis, keeping me accountable to what I was saying that I wanted to do, and ultimately to carry out my goals. And I think that's so important, because it's really hard to be super self-accountable on yourself, and to have your mentors around you who can not only keep you accountable, but also teach you things along the way and be really specific in the areas that you need to fix. I think it's really good. And I want to help you do that in your life for whatever area that you are going through, that you want to change and want to improve. So if you are interested on that, send me a DM on Instagram, mention that you listen to this podcast, and we can hop on a free 30-minute call and we can talk about, your goals and what you want to achieve, what you want to change, how we're going to get you there. And if you're so interested after that, we can pursue a coaching relationship, and we can make some amazing transformations in your life. So that's all the things that I got. And look out for the stress management course, which I will be coming out with at the end of January. It's going to be really fucking awesome. It's going to be super affordable, and it's going to be, most importantly, super fucking effective.
Awesome. Well, Joe, I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast this evening. Really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this with the listeners.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm so grateful to have a platform to share my story. And I'm so grateful that, you're not only doing this podcast episode, but you're also having all these episodes every single week, trying to inspire people to, not just inspire people. Fuck that. You're literally getting people to take action on making the change for themselves. And I think that's so beautiful what you're doing. So I just want to say thank you for starting this podcast and for sharing your story and the other people's stories that you interview with the world, because I think it's amazing.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Of course, man.
All right, my friend, that is my conversation with Joe. And I would love to hear what you thought about this episode. Joe has his own podcast as well. You can find him on Instagram, on Facebook, and reach out to him. Let him know what you thought of this episode. Maybe even check out his podcast and see. I know that he just had Jordan Syatt on a couple of weeks ago, which is sure to be a fantastic interview. So I'm excited about listening to that one on his podcast. If you could do me a favor, just take a minute or two and leave a review on whatever app it is that you are listening to this podcast. I'm really enjoying reading everyone's reviews and hearing what they have to say about the show and what they think is great and what they think is something that is really going to benefit others. So thank you so much to those of you who have taken the time to leave a review. And I am very appreciative of not only the reviews, but of you guys taking some time to come and hang out with me on the podcast. So I look forward to bringing you another great episode. I have some really exciting guests lined up for 2020 in the coming months and weeks. So keep an eye out for that, and I will see you next week.